You ever notice how a finely tuned engine just feels right? All the parts, all the pieces, working together in perfect harmony to produce power and precision. Wouldn't it be amazing if your meetings operated at this level of efficiency and effectiveness? Full disclosure, I know next to nothing about car engines, but what I do know is that in formal meetings, you need well-crafted and properly handled motions in order to drive your discussion towards decision and concrete action. It's right there in the name, motion, and it's what gives organizations forward momentum. Keep watching this video and we'll find out how finely tuned motions will give your meetings the power and precision that you're looking for. Let's get into it. So, what is a motion? In the simplest and most plain language terms, a motion is a proposal. It's a proposal to the group, and it is a proposal that the group either take an action or take a position on an issue. That's pretty straightforward. That is what a motion is, a proposal. But let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the definitions that you'll find in the parliamentary authorities. Now, side note, if you don't know what I mean by a parliamentary authority, check out my video, Your Meeting Needs a Map. In it, we talk about what the parliamentary authorities are, why they're important, and how you can use them best to streamline your meetings. And don't worry, I'll wait. Welcome back. Okay. First book we're going to take a look at is An Introduction to the Procedure of the House of Commons by Lord Campion. Now, Lord Campion was the clerk of the House of Commons in the United Kingdom. This book is a second edition, so that puts it somewhere in the 1950s. This thing as a whole, this text as a whole, probably isn't much use to you and your organization. But what I do like is the definition of what a motion is. It goes into some good detail here. And so I'm just going to read from it. A description of the procedure of debate must start with the motion, which is the form in which debate on any subject must originate. Okay, so to translate, before you can have any discussion or debate on an idea, you must, according to Lord Campion, have a motion in which to debate or discuss. So it is step one. When a motion has been moved and seconded, the speaker proposes the question in the same terms as the motion, as the subject of debate, and at the conclusion of the debate, puts the question for the purpose of eliciting the immediate decision of the House. So what the author is saying here is there is a step-by-step procedure in which you put a proposal forward, the speaker asks the group, and in this case, the speaker really means the chair, the presiding officer, asks the group if it's a good idea, and then the group has a discussion about the pros and the cons and the merits of the proposal. And then at the end of the debate, the speaker puts the question for the purpose of eliciting the immediate decision, and that is for our purposes when the speaker restates the question to the group and the group decides by voting. Motion, question, decision are all parts of a process which may be called the elementary form of debate. This simple form of debate is capable of being made involved by the introduction, after the question has been proposed, of a new motion involving a new subordinate process of debate of the same form, the motion, question, decision, which has to be disposed of before the group can return to the question on the original motion. These new motions are sometimes called subsidiary motions to distinguish them from the substantive motions on which they depend. And they themselves are divided into various types, as will be shown later. And we will talk about these various kinds of motions. We're going to talk about them throughout this channel, and we'll touch on them here in this video. Now, the next place I want to look is to Cannon's Concise Guide to Rules of Order. A matter requiring a decision of the assembly is initiated by means of a motion made by a member. The steps are that the motion is moved by the member, the motion stated to the assembly and proposed as a question by the chair, debate of the question, the putting of the question by the chair for a vote, and the determination of the votes for and against the motion. A motion is stated and put by the chair as a simple question so that the members of the assembly can vote either yes or no. There are no in-between positions. So I think you're starting to see a bit of a thread here. The whole process of discussion and debate starts with a very clear motion that comes from a member and is then put to the group by the chair, the presiding officer, or in the first case, the speaker. All right, now over to the American Institute of Parliamentarians Standard Code of Parliamentary Procedure, and this is the second edition. It's fairly new within the last year or two. And the beauty of this authority is how they use really clear and straightforward language. So, in this case, we're talking about what's called a main motion. And that connects back to the first discussion as the substantive motion. A main motion is a substantive proposal presented to the assembly for consideration, discussion, decision, and action. It is usually originated by an individual member or a committee. It is the basic motion for the transaction of business because it is a fundamental principle of parliamentary law that only one subject can be considered at one time. A main motion can be proposed only when no other motion is before the assembly. While the main motion is the most important kind of motion, it is also the lowest ranking motion in the precedence of motions. Now, we're not going to get into it in this video, but as we stack motions on motions and have different motions that alternate and have different motions that alter the original motion, the substantive motion, the main motion, there is a ranking order of motions. But believe me when I tell you this, it is most important to understand a main motion, a substantive motion, and how it works, and the other pieces fall right into place. The purpose of a main motion is to propose an action to the assembly for a decision. Remember when I first stated in plain language that a motion is a proposal to the group, and a proposal to the group to take an action or a position. The effect of adopting a motion is to commit the organization to the proposed action stated by the motion or to express the sentiment in the motion. That's very helpful too. Now, we're going to look into Demeter's Manual of Parliamentary Law and Procedure. And if I didn't pronounce that correctly, maybe just shoot me a note in the comments section and let me know how I should be pronouncing it, but it looks to me like Demeter's. Now, explanation of terms. So this is important because we're now explaining the words we use to describe a motion or to move a proposal. I move means I propose, I offer, I submit. Motion means proposal. To adopt means to pass or to approve. Adoption means passage or approval. Resolution means motion, proposal, decision, etc. And we'll have another video that talks about the nuances between motions and resolutions. But for our purposes, resolution means a motion, a proposal, or a decision. Now, here are some other words that you'll encounter in formal meetings. Whereas means since, in the view of the fact that, in as much as, or more modern English, because. Whereas means because. Resolved means decided or determined. That is, let it be decided, or let it be here determined. And the word preamble, which we'll talk about when we talk about resolutions, means introduction, preface, or prologue. Notice that I didn't talk about Robert's Rules of Order quite yet. And that's because Robert's Rules, while it uses the same similar definitions, very quickly gets into things like secondary motions. But essentially, Robert's Rules agrees that a motion is a proposal, and it's a proposal put to the group to take an action or to take a position. So that's our walk through plain language and through what the parliamentary authorities have to say and how they defined the word motion. The key takeaways, I think, here is that your engine, your meeting engine, is the motion, the substantive motion or the main motion. It's the idea that you have to put to the group as a proposal. I think we should do X. I move that we do X. I think it's important to remember here that there are secondary motions like incidental motions or subsidiary motions, and that these motions can impact how the main motion is being dealt with. I think for our purposes here in this video, that's really as deep as we need to go into the secondary motions.
Like any engine, the power of motions relies on their proper movement. If a motion is not moved correctly, it can lead to friction, inefficiency, or even a breakdown in the decision-making process. Moving a motion is not just a formality, it is the critical first step in ensuring that an idea gets the attention that it deserves. It sets the direction and ensures that everyone is on the same page, ready to engage in a meaningful discussion. So, let's look at how to properly move a motion. Before you even get to the meeting, you're going to want to take your idea and do some work to turn it into a clear and crisp motion. Watch any of my videos on this channel that talk about smart motions. I've developed a step-by-step framework for turning ideas into motions and for asking the right questions during debate in order to get decisions that will lead to action. Now you're in the meeting. You first need to be recognized by the chair. Once you have this recognition, you start your motion with, I move that. For example, I move that we purchase a new table, or I move that we bring cake to the next meeting. If at least one other person thinks that this idea is good enough to discuss, they will second the motion. A seconder does not need to be recognized by the chair, nor do they need to agree with the proposal. They just need to think it should be discussed, and if so, they will state clearly. Second, we will go a little deeper into seconding a motion in another video, what it means and what it doesn't mean and why it is important, so look for that in the near future. It's at this point that the chair of the meeting will restate your motion as a question for the group to consider. Once the chair has restated the motion, they will ask for debate and discussion. At this point, the chair has given the motion to the group, and it is no longer your motion. Any changes from here on in are to be handled by amendments or any other secondary motions that may apply. After everyone in the group has had their say, the chair then puts the proposal in its final form back to the group for a vote. Remember, this is the job of the chair and not anyone else's. So no blurting out question by members simply because you've seen it done before or you're fed up with hearing others speak. That sort of thing is a procedural pothole, which is out of order and one that I discuss in more detail elsewhere on this channel. The question has now been put to the group by the chair, and it's time to vote in favor or against the proposal. Remember, unless a higher threshold is explicitly required, a majority of votes wins. Finally, I would always recommend that when the chair reports the results of the vote, that they also say back to the group and to all who are listening or watching what that result means. For example, those voting in favor have it, the motion passes, and as a result, we will bring cake to the next meeting. There is nothing to lose and everything to gain by being crystal clear on what the results of a vote actually mean.
So we've established that motions are the driving force behind our meetings. But what can you do with that information today? Well, I think first, just really reinforcing the fact that you're going to want to have a very clear, concise, crisp proposal to put forward to the group in order for them to really consider the pros and cons. I'd encourage you to take a watch at any of the videos on this channel that talk about smart motions. We talk about a framework of drafting and redrafting motions in order to make them very clear, crisp, consistent, with all the information that your colleagues are going to want to know in order to make their decision on your proposal. Once there's a clear proposal, once you've made the motion, once you said, I move that we do X, it's then for the chair of the meeting to restate the question to the group. And it's at that point that the proposal becomes the group's proposal. It's no longer yours. It's for the group to discuss and decide. And do things like alter it or postpone it as they see fit. You can always make changes, set aside the motion, check out the parking lot of ideas to see a few ways on how you can buy some time if you need some more research or some time to think about things. But the way to do that, to make those changes, the alterations, or to put a pause on the conversation, is through other secondary motions. And finally, I think you're going to want to become familiar with the steps of putting the motion forward, having it seconded, the chair putting the question to the organization, having a vote on whether the proposal should be adopted or not, and the restating of the question really to confirm what the decision of the group was. Going through these steps may seem unnatural and awkward at first, but just like any skill that you learn, or any sport or musical activity, when you break down the fundamentals into pieces and get very familiar with those pieces, put them back together, I promise you it'll become second nature in no time flat. As you can see, it is motions that kick off the entire process of making decisions and taking actions. Any other approach, and you're just spinning your wheels.
Motions shouldn't be an afterthought. They're the engine of your meetings. We talk a lot about motions on this channel, so check out any of the other videos that you'll find here. Videos like 6 Steps to Decision, procedural potholes, and especially smart motions. Remember, when they're well crafted and handled properly, it's motions that will drive discussion towards decisions and concrete action. So make sure that they're fine-tuned to give your meetings the power and precision
that you're looking for. Meeting adjourned. Now why not check out one of these two videos, and I'll see you next time.